Make it easy. That's it. Run it in the background. The best example for this is weight loss. You don't go lose weight. You just stay on a diet, go about your work and everything you want to do with your time, and then one day you realize you're at your goal weight. Dieting doesn't take months or years in a sense because you're not actively doing anything. Start a habit, run it in the background, and do something else in the foreground while results generate themselves. Read a novel or philosophy book by Ayn Rand, take up a trade, enroll in a class. People often overemphasize discipline, sometimes motivation. You gotta put in the work. And that sounds hardcore, but it's not efficient. You always want to make things as easy for yourself as possible. That's just obvious. Why would you make anything harder on purpose for the same results? And how cool is it to be the guy who does things effortlessly that other people struggle with? You work on your degree, you've accomplished something amazing. Oh, and by the way, you also had an amazing body transformation, just casually. In a sense, you should not want results. You want to be content with where you are right now so that you don't foolishly chase results because you can't get them. They just appear. And you also want to be content with doing things that will bring results, like being content with being on a lower calorie diet. If you're not satisfied with how you look, then too bad, because there's nothing you can do about it. You can, however, make a future you look better. But you see how there is essentially zero satisfaction to be gained from being on a weight loss diet. At most, you can be satisfied with seeing yourself as a disciplined person who tracks calories. That just makes you more satisfied in the moment. If you're unhappy with being on a diet, but you also like feeling like a disciplined person, then that can add up to zero. But notice that we're only talking about the current moment. You have to like the process, or at least be fine with it. Forget about results. There is only you right now on this diet. If you hate every day on a diet, you're setting yourself up for failure. People talk about trading the present for the future. In a sense, that doesn't exist. There's only today. But progressing towards a goal makes the present better and more meaningful. If you run a diet slowly and intelligently so that you're basically just as satisfied with it as with a maintenance diet and have to put no effort into it, then it doesn't matter how slow the diet is because you're essentially going to get there with no effort put into it. Hell, you might even not get there. That can happen. You can incorrectly estimate your deficit and you end up at the same weight as when you started. But that doesn't matter because you didn't put any work into it. And it's dissatisfactory, sure, but you didn't actually lose anything. I'll stay on weight loss for a second just to be specific, but I'll move on to other habits. You need to figure out what works with your psychology. Don't figure out your psychology, that's almost impossible, but in this context, figure out what sticks and what doesn't. A lot of people are fine with skipping breakfast. They don't really feel like they need to eat until they've kickstarted eating. In a sense, it feels like it's hard, but you can do it. Whereas if you've eaten carbs especially, now when you get hungry, you feel like you have to eat. Eat things that taste pretty good so that you're satisfied with your diet, but not so good that you want to eat more. You can have those on special occasions. Don't keep super tasty things in your fridge so that you won't get tempted. Those are things that basically require no discipline or motivation. People like to be hardcore, but you wouldn't literally shoot yourself in the foot to make walking harder to build willpower. The saying that if you have two roads, one is harder, one is easier, then the hard one is better, is bullshit. The reason people say that is because typically we only consider the roads that will get us where we want to go, and there's a natural tendency to avoid hard things. But at the same time, there is a pull to do hard things. And very often people make things hard for themselves for no reason. Or they don't believe that something easy could give them results. Back in the day, people were laughing at the idea of a weight loss pill. But now we have Ozempic. All in all, that's just the wrong way of looking at things. You should always choose the road that gives you the best results, regardless of whether it's easy or hard. Get your ego out the door. Don't try to be hardcore, be efficient. Keep in mind though, that doesn't mean you should illegally get Ozempic, because the results of that also include a risk of getting caught, aside from the side effects of the medication itself. But if you can get it legally, it is an option. You have to evaluate it properly, but take pride out of the equation. Now, of course, that doesn't apply to everything. It just applies to things we generally think of as habits. You cannot start a business running it in the background. You have to actively work on it and achieve goals. But something like reading, you can find a way to do it effortlessly. For example, read when on the bus on your commute to work. A couple of pages, but it adds up. Cardio, if you drive a lot, maybe find a car park where there is often a free slot. When closer to your destination, there often isn't. So now the time you would spend looking for a free slot becomes time spent walking. So you're at a net zero time commitment. Or get an under the desk treadmill. And still with that, it's not that simple, because doing simple things is no problem on a treadmill. But there are some tasks where you just have to literally sit down and think. So there is a lot of exploration that still needs to be done. This isn't simple, it will take time, but that should be your goal, to make it effortless. Incorporate it into your lifestyle so that you barely notice a difference. Don't just do it, do the habit. Practice incorporating the habit into your lifestyle so that at some point it will become effortless. This comes down to the difference between practice and deliberate practice. Don't add cardio and hope that at some point it will become natural. Instead, deliberately practice doing cardio in a way that you hope will make it come naturally to you. Try things out. What makes it effortless and what requires some willpower. Maybe even a new way of incorporating a habit into your lifestyle makes it easy at first, but over time you find that it's still not enough to make it stick in the long term. You're still catching yourself having to force yourself to do it, or it takes too much time and is not enjoyable enough that it doesn't really make sense in your lifestyle. If you want to learn something, maybe find a YouTube channel that teaches it in a simple and enjoyable way that you can put on while grocery shopping. Of course, if you want to become very knowledgeable in some area, you will need to put some work in. But you can add that to your routine as an extra. Certainly, that can be done with, for example, learning a new language. Even just somewhat recognizing some terms and orienting yourself in the subject can make learning deeply about it later much more comfortable and smooth. If you want to start journaling, you want to have a simple and efficient system that also actually gives you what you want to get out of it. This also goes back to my valid reason hypothesis and irrelevance hypothesis videos. If you're giving up on journaling, maybe it actually wasn't giving you what you thought it was. Maybe you felt that it cleared up your mind, but didn't really believe that it had a positive impact on you because maybe they just didn't. You didn't actually see any measurable or relevant improvements. If you know it makes your life better, you will continue doing it. It becomes satisfying, so you're fine with doing it. But if you're not deeply convinced that it makes your life better, then it's just a chore that you have to put effort into. Now, while I said that mostly relates to habits, you can generalize it to bigger projects. But now it's not about putting it in the background, it's just about enjoyment and satisfaction. Don't do things you don't like. It's as simple as that. If you do things you like, it won't require discipline or motivation. Of course, that's easier said than done. You may want to keep the job you hate because you don't want to be homeless. So you may need to put your job in the foreground and put some discipline or motivation into it. But we should always be striving to make things easier. And then when it's easier, you can take more things on or just do so much of it that it actually becomes hard. So it's not just about getting lazy. That's typically what leads to success. Liking what you're doing but stretching it so far that now you have to apply some willpower. It's definitely not applying willpower to even start doing it. If your job is at least somewhat enjoyable, go in that direction of what is more enjoyable and comes naturally to you without having to apply willpower. You could categorize going to the gym as something you have to put work into, but I don't skip gym days. I don't have to force myself to go to the gym. I look forward to it. It's negative willpower. If you don't, since everyone needs to move a little, try to find something that you're at least fine with doing. Or maybe your training plan just sucks and you're not getting results, so obviously you wouldn't like it. Again, this is not simple. It's a very long process to move towards things that come naturally to you. But it is very important to move in that direction.